Well, International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry is facing criticism over her remarks on athletes' pay.
I don't believe in paying athletes, and I come from a small country. I came from a sport that doesn't necessarily pay athletes very well, and I still don't believe we should be paying athletes at the Olympic Games.
She also says the organization should do more to find more ways to directly impact competitors. The IOC doesn't currently pay those competing a salary, leading to funding often having to come from sporting federations or scholarships if the athlete isn't able to afford the costs. Australian Olympian Sally Pearson called Coventry's comments insensitive, adding that strict rules prevent athletes from earning money in the lead up to the Games. Well, those comments don't sit well with a lot of people, including our next guest, a two-time Olympic gold medalist in swimming. Matt Richards represented Britain on the world stage, and he joins us now live from Los Angeles. Thanks for talking with us. What's your reaction to the IOC president's comments?
Yeah, look, firstly, thank you for having me. I think it's a really frustrating thing to read as an athlete. Somebody that's been to 2 Olympic Games so far and hopefully plans to go to more. And having experienced the challenges that come with that from a financial perspective, it's difficult to read that the person who stepped into the role of presidency of the International Olympic Committee is saying that they don't believe in paying athletes and, therefore don't believe in supporting those journeys for the athletes to get to the Olympics and then support their lives and their journeys after their athletic careers finish. So it's really difficult to read and frustrating. But actually, I think it's one of those moments that seems to have stirred up quite a fuss amongst the athletes that it involves, and hopefully will be something that might be a bit of a catalyst for some change that could come in the future.
Yeah. So what should change? What should happen?
I think there's a couple of elements to this. Firstly, I do believe that athletes should earn money for going to an Olympic Games, whether that be a fee for participation and or some prize money for the athletes that succeed when they're there. I was speaking with Cam McAvoy, who's another swimmer from Australia, earlier today, and he was saying that if the Olympics were to pay out $10,000 per athlete that competes at the Games, and then $100,000 for a gold, $60,000 for a silver, and $25,000 for a bronze, it would cost them $180 million to do so at the Olympic Games, which sounds like a massive figure. But actually, when you take into account that at the Paris Olympics, there was a $1.1 billion surplus in the year of 2024 for the IOC that therefore went to administrative costs and reserves. All of a sudden, it seems like it's quite reasonable. And so when you compare that to other sporting bodies, the NBA, for example, pays 50% of its revenues out to their athletes. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, there's opportunities there. And likewise, the Rule 40 that bans athletes from being able to use their own image and their own likeness during the Games period to earn revenue from sponsorship and opportunities themselves. If they were to lift that and give athletes the ability to endorse themselves when they're at the Games and, use themselves as the marketing asset that they are, that would go a long way as well. So there's lots of different routes that could be explored, but frustrating to see that it doesn't appear as though the IOC are even willing to have the conversation.
Yeah, I've covered, I think, 7 Olympic Games. And let me tell you, I mean, you know this, but maybe not everybody watching knows it. Those games generate massive amounts of money. And if you're a sponsor, if you're a politician, even if you're a media, you get, you go to nice clubs, you get nice seats at the Games. The TV revenues are massive. So the idea that some of that money should end up going to athletes, I think, does not seem unreasonable to a lot of people, especially when you think of how the Games have changed, right? It's not 1928, and you have professional athletes, and then you have some athletes who just labor in obscurity and poverty to get to the Games. So you said what you hope happens. We have about a minute left. How do you think you and other athletes will get there? What do you have to do to start getting some level of pay and medal awards, do you think, for Olympians?
Yeah, I think it's about time that athletes start to come together and have this discussion collectively. There's always strength in numbers in that aspect. And I think already over the last sort of 24, 48 hours, and since those sort of comments have come out from Kirsty herself, there's been a lot of talk from athletes already all around the world, myself included in those conversations about, is this time to come together, collectively and almost build out some kind of group, if you like. I'm not going to call it anything other than that for now. But something that can come together as a collective to put pressure on the IOC and the governing bodies to do better and to support their athletes more so at the Olympic Games, and essentially give a share out to the revenue that's generated, the tens of billions that are generated over the quadrennials to the athletes that put on the show. So that's something that I think is going to be interesting to explore over the next coming weeks and months and potentially years. But fingers crossed, just talking about it as we are now is the first step to doing so.
Yeah, well, I hope we can stay in touch. I'd like to get an update from you if things do start to move, especially in the next few weeks. Matt Richards, two-time Olympic gold medalist. Thank you so much.
Thank you.